They found the bank vault at dawn, its steel door blown clean off the hinges, and 17 bodies cooling in pools of blood that hadn't yet soaked into the floorboards. The military gold, $200,000 meant to pay 3 garrisons through winter, had vanished like smoke. Marshal Wade Mercer stood in that charnel house, reading the angles of death, and understood with cold certainty that no ordinary posse could track the devils who'd done this. He needed someone who thought like them, someone who killed like them, someone the law had already condemned to hang. Stay with me through this tale of blood, gold, and redemption. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far across this country our story travels. The rope had already left its mark on Cole Vance's throat, a raw red line that would have been the last thing he ever felt if Wade Mercer hadn't walked into the Salvation Jail at 4 a.m. with a federal writ and a loaded peacemaker. Cole sat on his bunk in the condemned cell, hands clasped between his knees, staring at nothing. He'd made his peace 2 days ago. The gallows had been built in the yard where he could see it through the barred window, and he'd watched the carpenter test the trapdoor 3 times yesterday afternoon. Each metallic clang had sounded like a period at the end of a sentence he'd been writing in blood since he was 16. The marshal's bootsteps echoed down the stone corridor long before the lamplight reached Cole's cell. Different from the shuffle of the night guard or the deliberate tread of the warden, these were the steps of a man with purpose, and purpose at this hour meant nothing good. Wade Mercer stopped outside the bars. He was a tall man, gone lean from too many years in the saddle, with iron-gray hair and eyes the color of winter sky. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, courtesy of a Comanche lance at adobe walls. He studied Cole the way a man might study a dangerous horse he was thinking of buying. "Get up, Vance." Cole didn't move. "Come to watch me piss myself when they spring the trap, Marshal? Gallows ain't till noon." "Gallows are canceled." Wade pulled a key from his vest pocket. The lock turned with a sound like breaking glass. "You're riding out with me instead." That got Cole's attention. He stood slowly, every muscle in his body tensing for whatever trick this was. "The hell I am." The Salvation Bank was hit 3 nights ago. Military payroll, $200,000 in gold. 17 dead, including 6 soldiers and the territorial governor's nephew. Wade's voice was flat, factual, the way a man might describe the weather. The thieves wore guard uniforms, knew the vault combination, and disappeared into the borderlands like they'd never existed. I've got a cold trail, a hot warrant, and exactly nobody who can track worth a damn in country that'll kill a greenhorn inside of 2 days. Cole leaned against the cell wall, arms crossed. "Touching story, Marshal. What's it got to do with me?" "You rode with border raiders for 6 years. You know that country. You know how men like that think, where they hide, how they move." Wade's eyes never left Cole's face. "And you know Silas Crow." The name hit Cole like a fist to the gut. He kept his expression neutral, but his hands had clenched without him realizing it. "Silas is dead. Heard he took a bullet in Sonora 2 years back." "You heard wrong." Witnesses in Salvation described the raid leader. Big man, black beard, scar across his nose from a knife fight. Rode a blood-based stallion and gave orders like a field commander. Wade paused. "That sound familiar?" Cole's jaw tightened. Silas. After all these years, after everything that had burned between them, his brother had surfaced like something dead that wouldn't stay buried. "Even if I cared, which I don't. Why would I help you? I'm scheduled to hang in 8 hours for crimes I actually committed. No amount of tracking's going to change that sentence." Wade reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document sealed with red wax. Federal pardon, signed by the territorial judge, contingent on recovery of the stolen gold and apprehension of the thieves. You help me bring them in, you walk free. You run, you die tired. You cross me, I'll shoot you myself and sleep fine that night. Cole stared at the paper like it might be a snake. Just like that? I'm supposed to believe the same law that built those gallows is going to let me ride off into the sunset? I don't give a damn what you believe. The gold needs to come back, and you're the only son of a bitch mean enough and smart enough to find it. Wade's voice dropped lower, harder. I looked at your file, Vance. You're a killer and a thief, but you're not stupid. This is the only chance you're ever getting to see another sunrise that doesn't end with a rope. Take it or leave it, but decide now. The cell suddenly felt smaller than it had 5 minutes ago. Cole had resigned himself to death. had even found a strange peace in knowing exactly when and how it would come. But this was chaos and uncertainty, and the possibility of something he'd stopped letting himself hope for. Freedom, or a bullet in the back from a federal marshal who'd have every legal right to put him down. "What's stopping me from riding off the second we're out of town?" Cole asked. Wade smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "You'll be shackled to my saddle horn for the first 3 days. After that, if you run, I'll hunt you with the same dogs I'd use on any other animal. And Vance?" The marshal leaned closer to the bars. "I've never lost a man I was hunting. Never even come close." Cole believed him. Wade Mercer had a reputation that stretched from the Canadian border to the Rio Grande. Honest, relentless, and absolutely without mercy for men who broke their word. How long we got to find this gold? 2 weeks, maybe 3 before the trail goes completely cold. After that, Silas and his boys will be across the border or dug in so deep we'll never find them. And if we do find them, what then? Then we take them in for trial if they surrender. If they don't, Wade let the sentence hang. I'm authorized to use whatever force is necessary. Cole understood perfectly. This wasn't a rescue mission, it was a hunt, and one way or another, it would end in blood. He looked past Wade to the window where dawn was starting to gray the sky. Somewhere out there, Silas was counting stolen gold and probably laughing at how easy it had been. His brother had always been the bold one, the planner, the man who could walk into a room and make everyone believe whatever story he was selling. The last time Cole had seen Silas, they'd been on opposite sides of a campfire with guns drawn and 8 years of betrayal between them. That night had ended with Cole riding north alone and Silas screaming curses after him that carried across the desert for miles. Now Wade Mercer was offering him a chance to settle that old score and maybe, just maybe, keep his neck intact in the process. "All right, Marshal," Cole said quietly. "I'll track your gold. But if Silas is really behind this, you better understand something. He won't come easy, and he won't come alone. The men riding with him will be the kind who'd shoot their own mothers for a fifth of whiskey. Good thing I'm bringing someone who knows how men like that operate." Wade unlocked the cell door and swung it open. "Let's go, Vance. We're burning daylight, and that gold's getting farther away every minute we stand here talking." Cole stepped out of the cell for the first time in 4 months. His legs felt strange, unsteady, like he'd forgotten how to walk in straight lines. The guard at the end of the hall looked up in shock as they approached. "Marshal Mercer? What in God's name?" "Federal business, Tom. The prisoner's being remanded to my custody." Wade's tone invited no questions. "But the hanging? Postponed indefinitely. I'll file the paperwork with the warden." Wade kept walking, one hand on Cole's elbow in a grip that looked casual but felt like an iron manacle. "Come on, Vance. We've got a long ride ahead." They emerged into the pre-dawn chill, and Cole took his first breath of free air in what felt like a lifetime. The stars were fading overhead, and somewhere in the distance a rooster crowed. The town of Salvation was just beginning to wake, smoke rising from chimneys, a milk wagon rattling down the main street. Wade's horse was tied at the rail, a big roan gelding with intelligent eyes and scars on its flanks that told stories of hard country. Next to it stood a gray mare, already saddled and provisioned. "That's yours," Wade said, nodding to the gray. "She's steady, fast when she needs to be, and mean enough to bite if you try anything stupid." Cole approached the horse slowly, letting her smell his hand. She nipped at his fingers, testing, then seemed to decide he was acceptable. He swung into the saddle, and the familiar creak of leather, the solid warmth of a horse beneath him, felt like coming home after a long exile. Wade mounted his roan and pulled a pair of iron shackles from his saddlebag. "Right hand." Cole extended his arm, and Wade locked the cuff around his wrist, then ran the chain through a reinforced ring on his saddle horn before securing the other end. The message was clear. Try to run, and Cole would be dragged behind Wade's horse until there wasn't enough left of him to bury. "We'll head south to the bank first," Wade said, urging his horse into a walk. "I want you to see the scene. Read the tracks if there's anything left. After that, we follow wherever the trail leads." They rode through Salvation as the town woke around them. Shopkeepers sweeping their stoops stopped to stare. A woman hanging laundry in her yard actually crossed herself when she saw Cole, like he was a ghost or a devil or both. The Salvation Bank sat at the corner of Main and Frontier, a squat brick building that had been the pride of the territory until 3 nights ago. Now it looked violated, wounded, with federal soldiers standing guard at the door and black crepe hanging from the windows for the dead. Wade dismounted and secured both horses to the rail. He unlocked the shackle from his saddle but kept Cole's wrist cuffed, running the chain through his own belt. "Stay close and keep your mouth shut, unless I ask you a question." They climbed the steps together. The soldier at the door, a young corporal with barely enough beard to shave, saluted Wade sharply. "Marshal, we weren't expecting you back." "Got new eyes on the case, Corporal. This is Cole Vance. He's assisting with the investigation." The corporal's face went pale as he recognized the name. "Sir, that's the outlaw who—" "I know who he is, son. Open the door." Inside, the bank looked like a slaughterhouse. Someone had tried to clean up, but blood had soaked into the floorboards, and no amount of scrubbing would ever get it out. The smell hit Cole immediately, copper and gunpowder, and the sweet, sick stench of death that nothing could mask. 17 bodies had been laid out and removed, but their positions were marked with chalk outlines on the floor. Cole studied them with the practiced eye of a man who'd seen more than his share of killing. "They came in through the front," he said quietly, walking the scene. 3, maybe 4 men dressed as guards. The real guards were already dead, probably killed outside and stripped. Nobody inside suspected anything until it was too late. Wade watched him work, saying nothing. Cole crouched near the teller stations. Shots came from here, here, and here. He pointed to impact marks on the walls. Close range, deliberate. This wasn't panic fire. This was execution. They wanted everyone dead before anyone could raise an alarm. He moved to the vault. The door had been blown clean off with enough explosive to shake buildings 2 blocks away, according to the reports. But the charge had been shaped, directed, professional. Not the work of amateurs or desperate men. "How much powder would it take to do this?" Wade asked. "More than you'd carry in a saddlebag." They had it staged somewhere close, probably brought it in the night before and hid it. Cole ran his hand along the twisted metal. "And they knew exactly where to place it for maximum effect. Someone on this crew knows demolition, military demolition." "The gold was in 50-pound ingots," Wade said. 400 of them. That's 10 tons, give or take. How do you move that much weight without being seen?" Cole stood, looking at the positions of the windows, the angles of the streets outside. Wagons. Heavy freight wagons pulled by draft horses. They'd need at least 3, maybe 4, and they'd have to move at night, avoid the main roads. "South?" "South," Cole agreed. "Toward the border. Cross into Mexico. And that gold becomes impossible to recover. Silas knows that." Wade's expression hardened at the name. "Tell me about him. Everything." Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ruined vault. "Silas Crow is the smartest, meanest, most dangerous man I've ever known. He can plan a job 3 months out and account for every variable. He can convince a priest to rob a church and make him believe it's God's work. And if things go wrong, he'll sacrifice anyone and everyone to save himself." He turned to face Wade. "He was my brother, Marshal, blood brother, and he's the reason I ended up in that cell." "What happened between you two?" "We rode together for years, pulled jobs from Texas to California. We were good, maybe too good. Started thinking we were untouchable." Cole's voice went flat, distant. "Last job we did together was a mining company payroll in Silver Creek. Everything went perfect until Silas decided the split wasn't fair. He wanted my share too. When I refused, he shot me in the back and left me for dead in a ravine." Wade's eyes narrowed. "Obviously, you survived." "Took me 6 months to heal. By the time I could ride again, Silas had disappeared. I spent 2 years looking for him, and when I finally found him, the law found me." Cole touched the scar on his throat. "Maybe that's justice, or maybe it's just bad luck. Either way, if Silas is behind this robbery, he's planning something bigger than just stealing gold." "Like what?" "I don't know, but Silas never does anything small. This job took planning, inside knowledge, manpower. That's a lot of investment for a simple robbery." Cole shook his head. "There's something else, has to be." Wade considered this, then nodded toward the door. "Come on, we're losing time." They walked back outside into full morning. The street was busy now, merchants opening shops, farmers bringing wagons to market, children running to school. Normal life continuing while somewhere in the borderlands, 17 families mourned their dead and 10 tons of stolen gold rolled toward Mexico. Wade unlocked the shackle from his belt and secured it back to his saddle horn. We'll pick up supplies at the mercantile, then head south to where the trail starts. There's a freight station about 20 miles out, where witnesses saw heavily loaded wagons heading toward the Badlands. Cole swung into his saddle. Those wagons are long gone by now, Marshal. Silas won't waste time. Maybe. But men that careful leave traces. We just have to find them. They provisioned at Anderson's mercantile. Hardtack, jerky, coffee, ammunition, canteens, rope, and a bedroll for Cole since he'd owned nothing but prison clothes when Wade pulled him from that cell. The proprietor, a nervous man with thinning hair, kept glancing at Cole like he expected him to start shooting at any moment. "That's the Vance boy," he whispered to Wade while weighing out coffee beans. "The one supposed to hang today. Why's he out?" "He's helping with the investigation," Wade said curtly. "Put it on the federal account." They rode south out of Salvation at a steady pace, following the main road for the first few miles before Wade turned them onto a smaller trail that cut through scrub pine and red rock country. The land here was hard and unforgiving, the kind of place that killed the weak and merely wounded the strong. Cole rode with his shackled hand resting on the saddle horn, his free hand near his hip even though Wade hadn't given him a gun yet. Old habits. The chain clinked softly with each step of his mare. "How long you been marshalling, Wade?" Cole asked after an hour of silence. 14 years. Before that I was cavalry." "Adobe walls?" Wade touched the scar on his face unconsciously. "Among others." "You?" "Never wore a uniform. Seemed like too much commitment." Cole smiled without humor. "My pa was a preacher who ran off with a saloon girl when I was 7. Ma died of fever a year later. After that, it was me and Silas against the world. We did what we had to do to survive, and survival doesn't care much about legality. That's a story, not an excuse. Wasn't offering one." Cole studied the horizon. "You got family, Marshal?" Wade was quiet for so long, Cole thought he wasn't going to answer. "Had a wife, Sarah. Cholera took her in '74 along with our daughter. After that, the job was all I had left." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." But something in Wade's voice said it wasn't long enough, would never be long enough. They rode in silence after that, following the trail south and west toward the Badlands. The sun climbed higher, turning the sky white-hot and the landscape into wavering mirages. Cole's throat ached where the rope had chafed it, and he realized with dark amusement that he'd traded one death for the possibility of several others. But at least out here, he had a fighting chance. Around noon, they reached the freight station, a weathered building surrounded by corrals where teamsters changed horses and rested their wagons. The station master, a grizzled man named Polk, recognized Wade immediately. "Marshal, wondered when you'd be back." Wade dismounted and helped Cole down, keeping the chain secure. "The wagons that came through 3 nights ago. Tell me again what you saw." Polk scratched his beard. 4 wagons, heavy loaded, covered with tarps. 6 outriders, all armed to the teeth. They changed horses, paid in cash, didn't say much except they were hauling mining equipment to a claim near the border. "You believe that?" "Didn't much care one way or the other. They paid fair and didn't cause trouble." Polk squinted at Cole. "Who's this?" "Tracker," Wade said shortly. "Which direction did they head?" Polk pointed southwest. "Old Comanche Trail through the breaks. Nasty country. No water for 30 miles, and the heat'll kill a horse if you're not careful." Cole was already scanning the ground near the corrals. 3 days old, but wagon tracks that heavy would still show. He found them near the water trough, deep ruts cutting through the hardpan, heading southwest, just like Polk said. "They're running heavy," Cole said, crouching to examine the tracks. "Maybe heavier than just gold." "What else would they carry?" Wade asked. "Supplies? Ammunition? Extra weapons." Cole stood, brushing dust from his hands. "If Silas is planning to hold up somewhere until the heat dies down, he'll need provisions for his whole crew. Figure 10 men minimum, probably more." Wade turned back to Polk. "Anyone else come through asking about those wagons?" "Funny you should ask. Yesterday, a Mexican fellow rode in with 5 men. Hard-looking types. They were asking the same questions you are. except they weren't nearly as polite about it. Botum. Cole and Wade exchanged glances. Describe this Mexican, Wade said. 30s, lean, dressed all in black, had a silver-trimmed saddle and a matched pair of pistols. Spoke perfect English, but with an accent. Called himself Serrano. Cole felt ice slide down his spine. Mateo Serrano? Didn't give a first name. You know him? By reputation. Cole looked at Wade. Mateo Serrano is a border raider. Runs a crew of killers out of Sonora. If he's after this gold, things just got a lot more complicated. Wade's jaw tightened. How so? Because Mateo doesn't take prisoners, and he doesn't share. If he catches up to Silas before we do, there'll be a war, and if he catches up to us... Cole didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We'll deal with Serrano if we have to, Wade said. Right now, we focus on Silas. He turned to Polk. Anything else you remember? Just one thing. When those wagons pulled out, one of the outriders looked back at me. Big man with a black beard and a scar across his nose. He smiled, Marshal, like he knew something funny that nobody else did. Polk shivered despite the heat. Gave me the chills, that smile. Wade paid Polk for the information and for fresh water for the horses. Then they mounted up and headed southwest, following the wagon tracks into country that looked like the devil's own backyard. The trail led them through breaks and arroyos, across stretches of alkali flat, where the sun reflected off the ground like hammered silver, and the heat was enough to boil the thoughts in a man's skull. Cole rode with his hat pulled low and a bandana over his mouth and nose against the dust. Around them, the landscape was lifeless. No trees, no grass, just rock and sand and the occasional skeleton of something that had tried to cross this wasteland and failed. Buzzards circled overhead, riding thermals, waiting patiently for something to die. You really think we can catch them? Cole asked as the afternoon wore toward evening. I think we don't have a choice, Wade said. That gold represents 3 months' pay for every soldier in 3 garrisons. Without it, we've got men who can't feed their families. Some of them will desert. Some will turn to crime. The whole territory could collapse. Heavy burden for one marshal and one condemned outlaw. Wade looked at him. You want to go back to that rope, Vance? No, sir, I do not. Then shut up and track. They made camp that night in a dry wash where the rocks still held some heat from the day. Wade built a small fire from scrub brush, and they ate jerky and hardtack washed down with water that tasted like tin and minerals. Wade finally unlocked the shackle from his saddle, though he kept one end cuffed to Cole's wrist and looped the chain around a boulder too heavy to move. Try to run in this country at night and you'll be dead by sunrise. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, no water. Take your pick. Wasn't planning on it, Cole said, settling onto his bedroll. His body ached from the long ride. 4 months in a cell had left him soft. Wade sat across the fire, cleaning his pistol with practiced efficiency. Tell me more about Silas. What's his weakness? Cole thought about that while staring at the stars. Silas thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Usually, he's right. But it makes him arrogant, overconfident. He'll take risks no sane man would take because he believes he can talk or think his way out of anything. And he's loyal to exactly one person, himself. Every man riding with him knows that deep down, which means if things go bad, his crew will scatter like quail. Wade nodded slowly. What about you? Where's your loyalty? Cole met his eyes across the fire. Right now? Staying alive. After that, we'll see. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire pop and crackle. In the distance, a coyote howled and others answered, a sound both lonesome and wild. You think Silas knows we're coming? Wade asked. I'd bet money on it. He knows how you think, how the law operates. He'll have scouts watching his back trail. We get close, he'll know. Then we'll have to be smarter than him. Cole smiled grimly. Good luck with that, Marshal. I've been trying for 20 years. Wade banked the fire and stretched out on his own bedroll, his hand never far from his pistol. Get some sleep, Vance. Tomorrow we find out how good you really are at tracking. Cole lay back, staring up at the vast wheel of stars overhead. Somewhere under this same sky, Silas was probably doing the same thing, planning his next move, always 3 steps ahead, always certain he couldn't be caught. But Silas had never been hunted by Wade Mercer, and he'd never expected his own brother to come tracking him through the borderlands with a federal marshal and a death sentence hanging over his head. This was going to be interesting. Cole closed his eyes and listened to the night, wind across stone, the distant yip of coyotes, the soft stamp of horses shifting in their hobbles. He'd almost forgotten what freedom sounded like, even the limited freedom of a chain and a marshal who'd shoot him without hesitation. Almost forgotten, but not quite. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, 200,000 in stolen gold was rolling toward Mexico on wheels that left tracks even 3 days couldn't erase. The hunt had begun. Dawn came hard and bright across the badlands, turning the eastern sky the color of fresh blood. Cole woke to the sound of Wade already moving, boots on gravel, the clink of metal as the marshal saddled his roan. The chain on Cole's wrist had left a raw circle during the night, and his throat still ached where the rope had kissed it. "Sun's up," Wade said without looking at him. "We're moving in 10 minutes. Cole sat up, working the stiffness from his shoulders. His body had forgotten what it meant to sleep on hard ground under open sky. 4 months in that cell had made him soft in ways he hadn't realized until now. They broke camp in silence, Wade maintaining the same cautious distance he'd kept since pulling Cole from that condemned cell. The marshal had given him coffee and hardtack, but no weapon, no trust beyond what the chain and federal writ demanded. The wagon tracks continued southwest, cutting through country that grew increasingly hostile with each mile. By mid-morning, they'd entered territory where even the cactus looked mean, all thorns and twisted limbs reaching toward a sky that offered nothing but brutal heat. "Hold up," Cole said, raising his free hand. Wade reined in immediately, his right hand dropping to his pistol. "What?" Cole swung down from his mare, studying the ground. The wagon tracks were still clear here, but something else had joined them. Fresh horse prints, maybe 8 hours old, moving in the same direction. "We've got company," Cole said. 6 riders, maybe 7. Came through after midnight. Wade dismounted and crouched beside him, examining the tracks. "Serrano?" "Could be. Or could be scouts working for Silas." Cole followed the prints with his eyes, reading the story they told. They were moving fast, pushing their horses harder than smart men would in this heat. Which means they're desperate or stupid. Or both. Cole stood, scanning the horizon. The land ahead rose into a series of broken mesas and deep arroyos, perfect ambush country. "We need to be careful, Marshal. This trail's getting crowded." They mounted up and continued, but now Wade kept his Winchester across his saddle and his eyes on the high ground. Cole felt the weight of exposure, the vulnerability of being 2 men in open country where anyone with a rifle and patience could end them from 300 yards. Around noon, they found the first body. It was a horse, actually, a big bay gelding lying in a wash with its throat cut and flies thick as smoke on the wound. The saddle was gone, the saddlebags rifled, but the brand on its haunch was still visible. A crow with spread wings. "Silas's mark," Cole said quietly. "He always branded his horses that way. Said it was good luck." Wade studied the carcass. This wasn't an accident. Someone executed this animal. And whoever was riding it. Cole pointed to boot prints leading away from the wash, stumbling, desperate. They didn't go far. 20 yards out, they found the man. He'd been young, maybe 20, with sandy hair and the kind of soft hands that said he'd never done hard labor in his life. Now he lay face down in the dust with 2 bullet holes in his back and his pockets turned inside out. Wade rolled him over carefully. The boy's eyes were still open, staring at nothing, and his mouth was twisted in an expression that might have been surprise or might have been the beginning of a scream. "Know him?" Wade asked. Cole shook his head. "Never seen him before. But he was running with Silas. That horse proves it." Question is, was he running away or running toward something? Cole studied the tracks again. The story was written there for anyone who knew how to read it. Away! Look at the stride. He was running scared, not tactical, and whoever killed him caught up easy, shot him in the back without hesitation. Serrano's style? Maybe. Or maybe Silas cleaning house. Cole straightened. Either way, it means things are falling apart ahead of us. Could work in our favor. Wade was quiet for a moment, looking down at the dead boy. Then he pulled a blanket from his saddle and covered the body. "We'll mark this spot, Send someone back for him when this is over. You always do that? Cover the dead? When I can. Wade's voice was flat. Every man deserves that much, even the ones who chose wrong. They built a small cairn of rocks to mark the grave and moved on, following the trail deeper into the breaks. The land here was a maze of canyons and blind alleys, places where sound echoed strangely and shadows fell at wrong angles. Cole's mare started getting nervous, ears swiveling, nostrils flaring. Animals knew things men didn't, and right now she was saying danger close. Easy, girl, Cole murmured, running a hand down her neck. I feel it too. Wade had his Winchester out now, held loose but ready. How far ahead you think they are? Hard to say. With those wagons, maybe a day, maybe less. But Serrano's men are closing the gap faster. Cole studied the tracks. If I was Silas, I'd be looking for a place to ford up, somewhere defensible where I could see trouble coming. Like where? Cole thought back to the maps he'd seen, the country he'd ridden through years ago when he and Silas had been running together. There's an old mining camp about 15 miles southwest of here. Abandoned coal mine, still has some of the infrastructure standing. Water from a spring, high ground. Only one good approach. Silas know about it? We used it once, back in '72. Holed up there for a week after a job went sideways in El Paso. Cole met Wade's eyes. If he's smart, and he is, that's where he's headed. Wade considered this, then nodded. Then that's where we're headed, too. How long to get there? If we push, we could make it by nightfall. But Marshal... Cole paused, choosing his words carefully. If Silas is there and Serrano catches up, we'll be walking into a war. 3 different forces, all wanting the same gold, all willing to kill for it. You scared, Vance? I'm practical. 2 men against maybe 20 isn't odds I'd bet on. Wade's smile was cold as winter wind. Then we'll have to be smarter than all of them, won't we? They rode hard through the afternoon, following the wagon tracks across increasingly broken ground. The trail led them through a canyon where the walls rose like cathedral buttresses, and their horses' hooves echoed like drumbeats. Cole felt the weight of stone above him, the way the shadows seemed to press in from all sides. Halfway through the canyon, Wade suddenly reined in so hard his roan nearly sat back on its haunches. What? Cole started, then saw it. Across the canyon floor, stretched at chest height, was a length of wire, barely visible, catching light for just a moment before disappearing into shadow. Tripwire, Wade said quietly. Don't move. Cole sat frozen, his mare dancing nervously beneath him. Wade dismounted slowly, approaching the wire with the care of a man defusing a bomb. He followed it with his eyes to where it disappeared into a crack in the canyon wall. Dynamite, he called back, enough to bring half this canyon down on our heads. Silas's work? Or someone who learned from him? Wade pulled his knife and carefully cut the wire, then traced it back to where 3 sticks of dynamite had been wedged into the rock face. He removed the blasting cap and tossed it into the canyon. Whoever set this didn't want to be followed. Cole's hands had gone cold despite the heat. If Wade hadn't seen that wire, if they'd ridden just 3 feet farther... You saved our lives, Marshal, he said quietly. Wade remounted without comment, but Cole saw something shift in the man's eyes, a fractional softening, recognition that maybe Cole wasn't entirely the animal everyone believed him to be. They rode out of the canyon as the sun started its long fall toward the western horizon. The land opened up again into a rolling expanse of red rock and sage, and there, rising against the dying light, Cole saw the skeletal remains of the mining camp. It looked like bones bleaching in the desert, wooden frames collapsing in on themselves, rusted equipment scattered like the toys of giant children, and at the center of it all, the black mouth of the mine shaft yawning into the hillside. That's it, Cole said. That's where they'll be. Wade pulled out his field glasses and studied the camp. I see smoke. Someone's got a fire going near the main building. How many? Can't tell from here. We'll need to get closer. Wade lowered the glasses and looked at Cole. This is where things get interesting, Vance. If we ride in there without a plan, we'll end up dead or worse. What did you have in mind? Wade was quiet for a moment, working through calculations that Cole couldn't see. Finally, he reached down and unlocked the shackle from his saddle horn. The chain fell free, and for the first time since leaving Salvation, Cole's hand was his own. I'm trusting you, Wade said. Don't make me regret it. Cole rubbed his wrist, feeling the absence of the chain like phantom weight. What's the play, Marshal? We wait for full dark, then move in quiet. I need eyes on that camp. How many men, where the gold is, what kind of defenses they've set up. Wade reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a pistol, a clean Colt 45 with fresh ammunition. He handed it to Cole. You run, I'll hunt you. You cross me, I'll kill you. But right now, I need a partner more than I need a prisoner. Cole took the pistol, feeling the familiar weight settle into his hand like coming home. He checked the cylinder, 6 rounds, all good, and slipped it into the empty holster that had been riding his hip since salvation. I won't run, he said, meeting Wade's eyes. And I won't cross you. You've got my word on that for whatever an outlaw's word is worth. We'll see. Wade turned his horse toward a cluster of rocks about a mile from the camp. Come on, we'll set up there and watch until we know what we're dealing with. They picketed the horses in a ravine where they wouldn't be seen and made their way on foot to an outcropping that overlooked the mining camp. The sun had finally surrendered to the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold while the land below dissolved into shadow. Wade settled in with his field glasses while Cole studied the camp with eyes trained by years of reading ground and situation. Even in the growing darkness, he could make out details that mattered. I count 6 guards on patrol, Wade murmured, 2 by the main building, 2 near the mine shaft, 2 watching the approach from the south. Wagons are inside that big warehouse, Cole said, pointing. See how the doors are cracked open, but there's no light spilling out. They've got them covered, trying to hide the gold. Smart. Silas always was. Cole shifted position, studying the layout with professional interest. He's got the high ground covered, clear fields of fire in every direction. Anyone tries a frontal assault, they'll get cut to pieces. Wade lowered the glasses. Then we don't assault. We infiltrate. But through the mine shaft? You said there's water from a spring. Where's the outlet? Cole thought back, dredging up memories from a lifetime ago. East side of the camp, little creek that runs down into the ravine. The shaft has side tunnels that connect to the spring chamber. Could a man use those tunnels to get inside? If he didn't mind tight spaces and the possibility of cave-ins. Cole looked at Wade. You volunteering, Marshal? We both are, soon as full dark hits. Wade pulled out his pocket watch and checked the time. 2 hours. We rest, we plan, then we move. They settled in to wait as night fell over the badlands like a curtain. Stars emerged in their thousands, cold and distant, caring nothing for the small dramas of desperate men far below. A coyote called from somewhere in the darkness, and others answered in chorus. Wade pulled jerky and hardtack from his pack, and they ate in silence, watching the camp. The guards changed position every hour, professional, disciplined, the kind of men who knew their business and took it seriously. Tell me about Serrano, Wade said quietly. If he shows up, what should I expect? Cole chewed thoughtfully before answering. Mateo Serrano is pure predator. He doesn't care about laws or borders or who gets hurt. He wants the gold, and he'll kill everyone in that camp to get it. His men are loyal because he pays well, and because they're more scared of him than they are of dying. Sounds like a real sweetheart. He is. And if he knows we're here, he'll try to kill us too. We're competition, plain and simple. Wade nodded slowly. Then we'd better move before he arrives. You ready? Cole checked his pistol one more time, then nodded, as I'll ever be. They left their position and circled wide around the camp, moving through shadow and scrub toward the eastern ravine. The creek Wade had asked about was there, just like Cole remembered, a thin trickle of water running over smooth stones, barely enough to wet a man's boots. The mine entrance on this side was partially collapsed, hidden by tumbled rock and overgrown with desert brush. Wade lit a small lantern, keeping the flame low, and they squeezed through the opening into darkness that smelled of earth and old dynamite. Inside, the tunnel was tight, maybe 4 feet high, forcing them to move in a crouch that made Cole's back scream after the first 50 yards. Their breathing echoed strangely in the confined space, and water dripped somewhere ahead in the darkness. How far? Wade whispered. Maybe 200 yards to the main chamber. From there, we can access the shaft that leads up into the warehouse. Cole paused, listening. Wait. Voices. faint but unmistakable, filtering down through cracks in the rock above them. Wade killed the lantern and they froze, straining to hear. "Told you this was a mistake," a man's voice, nervous, young. "Shut your mouth and keep watch." That voice Cole recognized immediately, deep, commanding, with an edge like broken glass. Silas. His brother was maybe 30 feet above them, separated by rock and earth and 8 years of blood and betrayal. Wade looked at Cole in the darkness, and Cole nodded. They moved forward, feeling their way now without the lantern, guided by memory and the faint glow of lamplight filtering down from above. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber where the spring bubbled up from some deep aquifer, filling a pool before spilling away through the creek outlet. Wooden supports from the old mining operation still stood, draped with spider webs and the slow decay of abandonment. And there, cut into the ceiling, was the access shaft, a vertical climb of maybe 20 feet with rusted iron rungs set into the rock. Wade tested the first rung carefully. It held. He looked at Cole, and something passed between them in that moment, a decision, a commitment, the beginning of trust that neither man had planned on. "I'll go first," Wade whispered. "You cover the tunnel in case anyone comes." Cole nodded, drawing his pistol and positioning himself where he could watch both the tunnel entrance and the shaft. His heart was hammering now, blood singing in his ears. Above him, he could hear footsteps, voices, the ordinary sounds of men going about deadly business. Wade climbed slow and careful, testing each rung before trusting it with his weight. Twice, rusted iron crumbled in his hands and he had to find new holds. Cole watched, barely breathing, knowing that one wrong move, one sound, and everything would explode into violence. At the top of the shaft, Wade paused, listening. Then, with infinite care, he pushed up on the wooden hatch that sealed the opening. It gave with a soft creak that sounded like thunder in the silence. Wade froze. So did Cole. Above them, footsteps approached. "You hear something?" A guard's voice, casual, unconcerned. "Probably rats. This whole place is lousy with them." Different voice, equally relaxed. The footsteps moved away. Wade lifted the hatch another inch, peering through the gap. Cole could see a silhouette against the faint light from above, tense as drawn wire. Then Wade slipped through the opening like smoke and was gone. Cole waited in the darkness, counting heartbeats, listening to the drip of water and the whisper of his own breathing. Above him, silence. Then, faintly, the sound of a brief scuffle. Cloth tearing, a body falling, and Wade's face appeared at the opening. "Clear," he whispered. "Come up." Cole climbed fast, his muscles remembering skills he'd learned young and never forgotten. At the top, Wade helped him through into a storage room stacked with old mining equipment and empty crates. A guard lay unconscious in the corner, hands bound, mouth gagged. "He'll sleep for a while," Wade said. "Let's move." They edged to the door and Wade cracked it open. Beyond was the main warehouse, a vast space lit by oil lamps hanging from the rafters. And there, lined up like treasure from some pirate legend, were 4 heavy freight wagons covered with canvas tarps. Men moved between them, 8, maybe 10 that Cole could see, all armed, all alert. And at the center of everything, directing operations with the easy confidence of a general commanding troops, stood Silas Crow. He'd changed in 8 years. The black beard was fuller now, shot through with gray, and the scar across his nose stood out white against weathered skin. But the eyes were the same, dark and intelligent and absolutely ruthless. Cole felt something twist in his chest, a complicated knot of anger and memory, and something that might have been grief for the brother he'd lost long before Silas shot him and left him for dead. Wade pulled him back from the door. "That him?" "That's him." "And the gold?" "In the wagons. Has to be." Cole studied the layout, calculating angles and cover. "We can't take them all, Marshal, not just the 2 of us." "Then we don't try. We wait, we watch, and we learn. When the time's right." The explosion cut him off. It came from outside, a massive roar that shook the building and sent dust raining from the rafters. Men shouted, running for weapons, and through the warehouse doors Cole saw the night light up with muzzle flashes. "Serrano," Wade said. "He's here." Silas was already shouting orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "North wall! Get to the north wall! Don't let them flank!" Another explosion, closer this time. The warehouse doors blew inward in a shower of splinters, and 3 men came through firing, their weapons spitting flame and death into the confusion. Wade grabbed Cole's arm. "We're leaving, now!" But before they could move, a figure appeared in the doorway behind them. One of Silas's men, young and scared and holding a rifle that shook in his hands. "Don't move!" the boy shouted. "I'll shoot, I swear I'll—" Wade's pistol spoke once. The boy went down with a hole between his eyes, dead before he knew what happened. "Move!" Wade shoved Cole toward the access shaft. They ran through the storage room as gunfire erupted throughout the warehouse. Men were dying out there, screaming, bleeding, killing each other over gold that none of them would live to spend. Cole scrambled down the shaft, half falling the last 10 feet and landing hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. Wade came down after him, moving with the grace of long practice. "The tunnel," Wade gasped. "Back the way we—" The explosion that took out the warehouse foundation sent a shockwave through the earth itself. The tunnel ceiling groaned, and Cole heard the sound every miner dreads. The slow, gathering roar of a cave-in. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Wade's arm and pulling him toward the spring chamber. Behind them, the tunnel collapsed in a thunderous rush of rock and earth. Dust filled the air, choking, blinding, and for a moment Cole was sure they were both dead, buried alive in the darkness beneath a war they'd had no part in starting. Then they were through, stumbling into the spring chamber, coughing and gasping while the world fell apart around them. Wade sat against the wall, breathing hard, his face gray with dust. That didn't go according to plan. Cole almost laughed, but it came out as a cough that tore at his throat. "Welcome to my world, Marshal." Above them, the battle raged on. They could hear it through the rock, gunshots, explosions, men screaming as they died. Somewhere in that chaos, Silas was fighting for his life and his stolen gold while Mateo Serrano tried to take both. And here in the darkness, 2 men who'd been enemies less than a week ago sat side by side, trapped beneath the earth while other men killed each other over treasure that had already cost too many lives. Wade looked at Cole, and Cole looked back, and something passed between them that neither would have been able to name. "We're in this together now," Wade said quietly. "All the way to the end." Cole nodded. "All the way." The gunfire above them intensified, each shot echoing through the rock like the heartbeat of something dying. Cole sat in the darkness of the spring chamber, listening to men kill each other over gold they'd never spend, and tried to find another way out of this tomb. Wade had his lantern lit again, the flame turned low to conserve oil. The light threw their shadows huge against the dripping walls, making them look like giants instead of 2 desperate men trapped beneath the earth. "There," Cole said, pointing to a crack in the far wall. "That's new." The explosion opened it up. Wade moved the lantern closer. The crack was narrow, maybe 18 inches wide, but it went deep into the rock. Air moved through it. Cole could feel the faint breeze on his face, carrying the smell of gunpowder and blood from the battle above. "Could be a way through," Wade said, "or could be a dead end that gets us stuck and buried." "You got a better idea?" Wade looked back at the collapsed tunnel, then at the shaft overhead where occasional gunshots still rang out. "No, I really don't." They widened the crack with a rusted pickaxe Cole found among the debris, working as quietly as they could while the war raged on above their heads. The rock was soft here, sedimentary stone that crumbled under the blade, and after 15 minutes of hard labor, they'd opened a gap wide enough for a man to squeeze through. Cole went first, pushing his lantern ahead and wriggling into the darkness like a snake down a hole. The passage was tight enough to scrape his shoulders and hips, and for a moment panic touched him, the fear of being stuck, of dying in this black throat of stone while the air slowly ran out. Then the passage opened and he was through, tumbling into another chamber. This one was natural, not carved by miners, with stalactites hanging from the ceiling like frozen rain and a floor slick with moisture. Wade came through behind him, breathing hard. "Where are we?" "East of the main shaft, I think. Maybe under the warehouse itself." Cole held up his lantern, studying the chamber. "There's another opening. See it?" The opening led to a rough-hewn stairway cut into the rock. Old work, maybe from when the mine was first established. They climbed carefully, testing each step before trusting their weight, and emerged into what looked like a forgotten storage vault carved into the hillside. And there, stacked against the wall in neat rows, were 50 wooden crates stamped with military markings. "Well," Wade said softly, "looks like we found part of the gold." Cole approached the nearest crate and pried it open with his knife. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, were gold ingots, each one worth more than most men made in a year. The lamplight turned them into bars of captured sunlight, beautiful and deadly, and worth every drop of blood being spilled in the darkness above. "Silas must have moved some of it here for safekeeping," Cole said. "In case things went bad, he'd have insurance." "Smart. That's Silas, always thinking 3 moves ahead." Cole closed the crate. "Question is, do we take it now, or—" The trapdoor above them slammed open, and a man dropped through, pistol drawn and eyes wild with combat madness. He saw Wade and Cole, processed what the open crate meant, and brought his weapon up. Wade was faster. His peacemaker spoke twice, and the man went down with holes in his chest that pumped blood onto the stone floor. "Move," Wade said, already heading for the stairs. "They know we're here now." They ran up the stairs 3 at a time, emerging into chaos. The warehouse was a battlefield. Bodies sprawled across the floor, blood pooling in the lamplight, and the remaining fighters had taken cover behind the wagons and mining equipment. Silas's voice cut through the gunfire. "Fall back to the mine entrance. We can hold them there." When Cole caught a glimpse of his brother through the smoke and confusion, still commanding, still confident, even as his carefully planned fortress collapsed around him. Then a bullet whined past Cole's ear, and he dove behind an overturned ore cart. Wade landed beside him, breathing hard. "We need to get out of this crossfire before someone shoots us by accident. Or on purpose." Cole pointed to the eastern door, partially blocked by debris but still passable. "That way. Leads to the equipment yard." They moved low and fast, using smoke and confusion for cover. Men were dying all around them. Silas's crew, Serrano's raiders, all of them caught in a meat grinder of their own making. Cole saw a boy no older than 16 take a bullet in the throat and go down gasping, trying to hold his life in with both hands. The equipment yard was littered with rusted machinery and abandoned minecarts, offering dozens of places to hide or die. They just reached the cover of an old steam shovel when a voice froze them both in their tracks. Well, look what crawled out of the ground." Mateo Serrano stood 20 feet away, flanked by 3 of his men. He was exactly as Polk had described, lean and deadly in black, with silver trim on everything and a matched pair of ivory-handled pistols on his hips. His smile was the kind that never reached his eyes. "Marshal Mercer," Serrano said, his accent turning the words into something musical and threatening. "I've heard stories about you. They say you never lose a man you're hunting." "Stories are mostly true," Wade said, his hand near his weapon but not touching it. "Not yet." Serrano's eyes shifted to Cole. "And you must be the famous Cole Vance, the outlaw who escaped the gallows. Your brother speaks of you sometimes, when he's drunk. Nothing good, I'm afraid." "Silas never was the sentimental type," Cole said. "No, he is not." Serrano's smile widened. "Which is why when I kill him and take his gold, he will understand it is simply business, nothing personal." "You're assuming you'll live that long," Wade said. Serrano laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Marshal, I have 15 men in this camp. How many do you have? 2? The arithmetic, as they say, is not in your favor." Behind them, the battle had shifted. Cole could hear Silas's voice growing more distant, his men retreating deeper into the mine complex. Serrano's raiders were pushing forward, methodical and ruthless, leaving nothing alive in their wake. "I have a proposition," Serrano said. "You gentlemen walk away now. Go back to Salvation. Tell your superiors the gold is lost. The thieves all dead. In return, I let you keep your lives." "And if we refuse?" Wade asked. Serrano's hand moved to his pistol, not drawing, just resting there. "Then I kill you both and add your bodies to the collection. Your choice, Marshal. What's it going to be?" Wade looked at Cole, and Cole saw the calculation happening behind those winter sky eyes. 2 men against 15. The gold still somewhere in this labyrinth of buildings and tunnels. Silas trapped, but not dead. And Serrano standing there with all the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight in his life. "Tell you what," Cole said before Wade could answer. "How about we all take a step back and think about what happens next?" Serrano raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "You want the gold. We want the gold. Silas definitely wants the gold. Right now he's holed up in those tunnels with probably half his crew still alive and all the explosives he didn't use in his traps. Cole kept his voice casual, conversational. You push in there, he'll bring the whole mountain down. You'll get buried along with everything you came for. And you need someone who knows those tunnels. Someone who knows how Silas thinks. Someone who can get you to the gold without triggering every trap and ambush he's got waiting. Serrano's eyes narrowed. You're offering to betray your own brother? I'm offering to stay alive. The Marshal here, he's offering the same. Silas and I stopped being brothers the day he shot me in the back and left me for dead. Cole smiled, hoping it looked genuine. Besides, there's enough gold in there for everyone to walk away rich. Why die over it when we could all survive? Wade's expression didn't change, but Cole felt the tension radiating from him. This was the moment, the gamble that would either save them or get them killed. Cole was banking on two things: Serrano's greed and his arrogance. The silence stretched out. Somewhere in the distance, gunfire still crackled and men still died. But here in this yard full of rust and ghosts, 4 men and a fortune waited on the knife edge of a decision. Finally, Serrano laughed. You have courage, Cole Vance. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which. He looked at his men. Stand down. Let's hear what our new friends have to propose. Wade's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We go in together. You, me, Vance, and however many men you want to bring. We find Silas, we secure the gold, and then we negotiate how it gets divided. Negotiation. Serrano tasted the word. I like that. Very civilized. He gestured to the mine entrance where smoke was pouring out and occasional gunshots still echoed. Lead on then. Show me how well you know your brother's mind. They moved toward the mine in an uneasy procession, Wade and Cole in front, Serrano and his 3 men following close behind with weapons drawn. Cole could feel gun barrels pointed at his spine, feel the weight of betrayal he was setting up even though the man he was betraying had betrayed him first. The mine entrance was a black mouth exhaling smoke and the stench of burned powder. Bodies lay scattered near the opening, 4 of Silas's men caught, trying to hold the line, all dead now with the kind of wounds that said Serrano's crew didn't waste bullets. Inside, the tunnel was a nightmare of smoke and shadow. Someone had knocked over the oil lamps, and small fires burned here and there, eating at wooden support beams and sending toxic fumes curling through the passages. This way, Cole said, leading them deeper. He was navigating from memory now, reconstructing the layout from 8 years ago and hoping nothing essential had changed. Behind him, Serrano spoke quietly to his men in Spanish. Cole caught enough words to understand they were discussing the best way to kill Wade and himself once the gold was secured. Professional criminals thinking professionally about murder. Wade caught his eye in the lamplight, and Cole nodded fractionally. The Marshal understood. They were walking into a slaughter, but it was the only move available. The tunnel opened into the main mining chamber, a vast space carved from solid rock with support pillars every 20 feet and side passages leading off in 6 different directions. And there, scattered across the floor and stacked against the walls, were the remaining wagons and enough gold to make emperors jealous. But Silas and his men were nowhere to be seen. It's a trap, Wade said quietly. Of course it's a trap. Serrano's voice came from behind them, followed by the metallic click of hammers being thumbed back. But whose trap is the interesting question? The explosion came from above, carefully placed charges in the ceiling that Silas must have rigged days ago as a final insurance policy. Rock and timber rained down, cutting them off from the entrance, and in the chaos and confusion, Cole saw his brother step out from a side passage with a rifle in his hands. "Hello, little brother," Silas said. "Been a long time." He looked older than Cole remembered, harder, with eyes that had seen too much death and decided to stop caring. The scar across his nose was stark white against weathered skin, and his beard was matted with dust and dried blood. "Silas," Cole said, his voice steady despite the terror and rage churning in his gut. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be dancing at the end of a rope by now." Silas's smile was cruel. "But I guess you always were good at surviving, weren't you? Like a cockroach." More men appeared from the side passages, what remained of Silas's crew, maybe 6 or 7 of them, all armed and positioned at strategic points around the chamber. They had the high ground, the cover, and the advantage of knowing exactly what was about to happen. Serrano studied the situation with the calm of a man who'd been in worse spots and lived to tell about it. Silas Crow. I've heard stories about you too. None of them good, I'd wager. Silas kept his rifle pointed at Cole, but his eyes tracked everyone in the chamber. Mateo Serrano, the Sonora Butcher. You've got a reputation for taking what you want and killing anyone who gets in your way. Reputation is everything in our business. Then you'll appreciate what I'm about to do. Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. See, this gold represents 6 months of planning, considerable risk, and 17 dead witnesses. I'm not about to let some border trash and a federal marshal take it from me. And your brother? Serrano gestured to Cole. What about him? Cole made his choice 8 years ago when he decided his conscience was worth more than his share of a fortune. I'm just correcting a mistake I should have finished back then. Cole's hand hovered near his pistol, knowing he'd never clear leather before Silas pulled that trigger. 8 years of anger and betrayal came flooding back. The pain of the bullet in his back, the agony of crawling out of that ravine, the long months of recovery spent planning revenge that had never materialized. You were always too smart for your own good, Silas, Cole said, but you're not smart enough to fight us all. I don't have to fight you all. Just create enough chaos that you fight each other. Silas whistled sharply, and his men opened fire. The chamber erupted into hell. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning, and bullets ricocheted off stone with sounds like angry hornets. Cole threw himself behind a wagon as the air above him turned into a highway of lead death. Wade landed beside him, already returning fire with his Winchester. This is your brilliant plan? Still working on the details, Cole shouted over the gunfire. Serrano and his men had taken cover behind the mining equipment, trading shots with Silas's crew in a vicious crossfire that chewed up everything in between. 2 of Serrano's men went down in the first 30 seconds, and one of Silas's shooters took a bullet in the shoulder and fell screaming from his perch. The gold! Wade yelled. We need to secure the gold before... The second explosion cut him off. This one came from deeper in the mine, and Cole realized with sick certainty what Silas had done. The madman had rigged the entire complex to blow. He's bringing it all down, Cole said. The whole mountain. He'd rather bury the gold than let anyone else have it. Silas's laughter echoed through the chamber. You always were smart enough to see the endgame, little brother. If I can't have it, nobody can. The ceiling groaned. Dust and small rocks began to fall, pattering down like deadly rain. The support beams creaked under strain they were never meant to bear. We're leaving, Wade said, already moving. Now! But the entrance was buried under tons of collapsed stone. The side passages led deeper into the unstable mountain, and Silas was somewhere in the darkness, still laughing, still shooting, still determined to kill everyone who'd come for his stolen gold. Cole made a decision. While Wade provided covering fire, he ran for the nearest wagon and yanked back the tarp. Gold ingots gleamed in the lamplight, stacked like deadly treasure. He grabbed 2, the weight of them shocking even though he'd expected it, and shoved them into a canvas sack. What are you doing? Wade shouted. Getting paid for this nightmare, Cole shouted back, grabbing 2 more ingots. You want to leave empty-handed after all this? A bullet punched through the wagon 3 inches from his head. Cole dove flat, the sack clutched to his chest, and rolled behind cover as Serrano's men redirected their fire toward him. The ceiling collapsed in sections now, great chunks of stone falling like God's own hammers. One beam gave way entirely, crushing a wagon and the gold it contained beneath 20 tons of rock. Men screamed and ran, organization dissolving into pure survival instinct. Cole saw Silas making for a side passage, moving with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of these tunnels. Without thinking, Cole went after him, driven by something deeper than greed or survival, the need to finish what had started 8 years ago in blood and betrayal. Vance! Wade's voice behind him. Don't! But Cole was already running, following his brother into the darkness while the world fell apart behind them. The passage was narrow and low, forcing Cole to crouch as he ran. Ahead, he could hear Silas's boots on stone, steady and unhurried. The man knew exactly where he was going. The tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller than the first, with a single lamp burning on a makeshift table. And there, standing beside a door cut into the far wall, was Silas with his rifle pointed directly at Cole's chest. End of the line, little brother, Silas said. Cole stopped, breathing hard, the sack of gold heavy in his hand. It doesn't have to be like this. Yes, it does. It's been heading here since the day you decided your conscience was worth more than your family. You shot me, Silas. You left me to die in a ravine like a dog. Because you were weak, because you wanted to give back the money, make things right, turn yourself in like some kind of saint. Silas's voice was bitter. We could have had everything, Cole, everything, but you had to develop a conscience at the worst possible time. So you tried to kill me. I did kill you. Or I thought I did. Apparently you're harder to kill than I gave you credit for. Silas smiled, and it was the saddest thing Cole had ever seen. You know what the funny part is? I actually missed you after. Missed having someone who understood the way I think, who could plan a job and execute it perfectly. These idiots I'm working with now, they're nothing compared to what we were together. Then why? Cole asked. Why keep doing this? Because I'm good at it. Because when I pull off something like this, steal a fortune from under the noses of the army and the law and get away clean, it makes me feel alive. Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. And because you were right about one thing, I can't stop. This is who I am. This is all I'll ever be. Behind Cole, the sounds of collapse grew louder. Wade was shouting his name. Serrano was screaming orders in Spanish, and somewhere in the chaos, men were dying under falling stone. Walk away, Cole said. Take what you can carry and disappear. You're good at that. I am, Silas agreed. But first, I'm going to finish what I started 8 years ago. The shot, when it came, was impossibly loud in the confined space, but the bullet didn't hit Cole. Silas staggered, looking down at the hole in his chest with something like surprise. Behind him, in the doorway, stood a woman with a smoking rifle in her hands. She was small and dark-haired, wearing a dress that had seen better days and eyes that had seen worse things. And when she looked at Cole, recognition flared, instant and electric and impossible. Elena? Cole whispered. His wife. His dead wife. The woman he'd married in a little church in Santa Fe 9 years ago and lost to cholera 6 months later. Except she clearly wasn't dead. Silas fell to his knees, still staring at the hole in his chest like he couldn't quite believe it was there. You, he gasped. You were supposed to. To stay hidden? Elena's voice was hard as stone. To keep being your prisoner while you played outlaw? I'm done being afraid of you, Silas. She looked at Cole, and he saw in her eyes years of pain and secrets and survival he couldn't begin to understand. Hello, husband, she said softly. We need to talk. The world reduced itself to 3 impossibilities. Elena standing there with smoke curling from the rifle barrel, Silas dying on the stone floor between them, and Cole's heart trying to understand what his eyes were telling him. You died, Cole said, his voice barely a whisper. The cholera outbreak in Santa Fe. They told me you were buried with the others. Elena's eyes were dark wells of pain and something harder. Silas told you I was dead. He needed you to believe it so you'd stop looking for me. Silas coughed, blood bubbling on his lips. She was leverage, insurance. Each word cost him. Couldn't let you walk away. The mountain groaned around them, another section of tunnel collapsing somewhere close. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the lamp on the table flickered as if considering whether to give up entirely. We need to move, Elena said, her voice steady despite everything. This whole complex is coming down. There's a way out through the back tunnel, but we have maybe 5 minutes. Cole couldn't move, couldn't think past the fact that the woman he'd mourned for 8 years was standing in front of him, alive and armed and looking at him like he was a stranger she'd once known in a different life. How long? He asked. How long has Silas kept you? Since 2 weeks after our wedding. He came to Santa Fe, told me you were hurt, needed me. I went with him. Her voice was flat, emotionless, the way people spoke about trauma too deep to process. By the time I realized it was a lie, I was in a cabin in the mountains with guards watching every door. I looked for you, Cole said. When they told me you were dead, He showed me letters you supposedly wrote. Said you'd moved on, found someone else. I believed him for a while. Elena's grip tightened on the rifle. But even after I stopped believing, there was nowhere to run. He made sure of that. Silas tried to speak, but only blood came out now. He was fading fast, the hole in his chest stealing everything that made him dangerous, and leaving behind just a dying man on cold stone. Cole knelt beside his brother. 8 years of hatred should have made this moment satisfying, should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt empty. Why? Cole asked. Why keep her? Why not just kill us both? Silas's eyes focused on him with effort. Because I needed you to suffer the way I suffered when you chose morality over family.
Oh, you chose this, Silas. You shot me. You left me for dead. And you let me... Silas smiled, blood on his teeth. Should have killed me when you had the chance. The light went out of his eyes then, and Cole felt something inside himself break and reform into a different shape. His brother was dead. The man who'd taught him to shoot, to ride, to survive in a world that cared nothing for men like them, gone. And Cole felt relief mixed with a grief so complicated he couldn't begin to untangle it. Elena touched his shoulder. Cole, we have to go now. The urgency in her voice snapped him back. Behind them, the collapse was spreading, eating its way through the tunnel system like a hungry thing. He could hear men screaming in the distance. Serrano's crew, what remained of Silas's gang, all of them trapped in a tomb of their own making. And Wade. The marshal was still back there somewhere. There's a man with me, Cole said, standing. A federal marshal. I can't leave him. Elena's expression hardened. A marshal? You're riding with the law now? It's complicated. Everything with you always was. She moved to the door she'd come through, revealing a narrow passage cut into living rock. This tunnel leads to an old air shaft. We can climb out, but not if we wait for your marshal friend. Cole looked at the passage, then back toward the main chamber where dust and smoke billowed in thick clouds. Wade Mercer had pulled him from a condemned cell, had trusted him when no one else would, had given him a chance at something beyond the rope. Walking away now would be the smart play, the survival play. Take Elena, take what gold he could carry, and disappear into Mexico, where neither the law nor the past could find them. But he'd spent 8 years trying to be better than the man Silas had wanted him to be. And that man didn't abandon his debts. Go, Cole said to Elena. Take this. He handed her the canvas sack with the gold ingots. It's enough to start over somewhere new, far from here, far from all of this. She stared at him. You're going back for him. I have to. He's a marshal, Cole. The moment this is over, he'll arrest you, put you right back on that gallows. Maybe, or maybe he'll keep his word and let me walk. Cole touched her face, still unable to quite believe she was real. But I can't live with leaving him to die. I did enough things wrong when I was riding with Silas. I won't add this to the list. Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying his face like she was trying to find the man she'd married in the harder, older version standing before her. Finally, she nodded. The airshaft exits on the north slope, near a dry creek bed. If you make it out, that's where I'll be. If you don't... She didn't finish the sentence, just stood on her toes and kissed him, brief and fierce, and tasting of tears and gunpowder. Then she was gone, disappearing into the tunnel with the gold, while Cole turned and ran back toward the dying mountain. The main chamber was a nightmare of dust and darkness. Half the ceiling had come down, crushing wagons and men alike beneath tons of stone. Small fires burned where oil lamps had shattered, creating pockets of hellish light in the gloom. Mercer, Cole shouted, his voice barely audible over the groaning rock. Wade! A hand grabbed his ankle from beneath a fallen beam. Cole dropped to his knees and found Wade pinned beneath timber and stone, his face gray with pain and dust. Thought you ran, Wade gasped. Thought about it. Cole assessed the situation. The beam was massive, easily 300 pounds, and the rock piled on top made it worse. Can you feel your legs? Unfortunately, yes. Everything hurts. Good. Means nothing's severed. Cole braced himself and heaved at the beam. It shifted an inch, then settled back. Damn it. Leave me, Wade said. Get out while you can. Not happening, Marshal. That's an order. Good thing I'm an outlaw who doesn't follow orders. Cole looked around desperately for leverage, something to use as a pry bar. His eyes landed on a steel mining pick buried in the rubble. Hold on. He wedged the pick under the beam and threw his weight against it.
The beam shifted, groaning like a living thing, and Wade bit back a scream as the movement ground broken ribs against his insides. Almost, Cole grunted, muscles screaming. Almost. The beam lifted enough for Wade to drag himself free, leaving blood on the stone. Cole dropped the pick and hauled the Marshal to his feet, draping Wade's arm over his shoulders. "Can you walk?" "Don't have much choice, do I?" Wade's breathing was labored, each breath obviously costing him. "Where's the exit?" "Side tunnel, northeast corner." Cole half-carried, half-dragged Wade through the chaos, navigating by memory and desperation. They'd almost made it when Mateo Serrano stepped out of the smoke like a ghost from hell. He was blood-soaked and wild-eyed, one arm hanging useless at his side, but he still had a pistol in his good hand and murder in his expression. "You!" he snarled at Cole. "This was your plan all along. Lead us in. Let the mountain kill us. Take the gold for yourself." "Actually, that was Silas's plan," Cole said. "I'm just trying not to die." Serrano raised his pistol. "You first, then the Marshal." The shot that rang out didn't come from Serrano's gun. It came from behind Cole, and Serrano went down with a hole in his forehead, dead before he understood what happened. Cole turned to find Wade leaning against the wall, his peacemaker smoking in his hand, his face twisted with pain and determination. "Told you I never lose a man I'm hunting," Wade said. "That includes partners, even temporary ones." The ceiling groaned ominously. This section of tunnel was about to go. "Move," Cole said, and they stumbled together toward the passage Elena had shown him. The tunnel was as tight as she'd warned, forcing them to move single file with Cole in front and Wade struggling behind. Several times Wade's breathing stopped entirely, and Cole thought he'd lost him, but the Marshal kept pushing forward with the stubborn refusal to die that had kept him alive through 14 years of frontier law. The air shaft was a vertical chimney maybe 40 feet tall with iron rungs hammered into the rock. Some were rusted through, others missing entirely, but it was the only way up. "I can't climb," Wade said, his voice barely a whisper. "Ribs are broken. Maybe lung punctured." Cole studied the shaft, then made a decision. He took his belt and Wade's, lashed them together, and created a crude harness around Wade's chest under his arms. "What are you doing?" "Something stupid." Cole started climbing, feeding the belt rope through his hands as he went. "When I get to the top, I'm pulling you up. Try to use your legs if you can, but mostly just don't fight me." "This is insane. You got a better idea?" Wade was quiet, which was answer enough. Cole climbed fast, ignoring the way the old rungs groaned and shifted under his weight. Twice he had to skip missing rungs entirely, swinging his body to reach the next secure hold. His shoulders screamed, his hands were raw, but he kept moving because stopping meant dying. At the top, he emerged into moonlight and clear air that tasted like freedom. The shaft opened onto a hillside covered in scrub brush and loose rock. In the distance, he could see the glow of fires from the dying mining camp. He braced himself against a boulder and started pulling. Wade's weight was considerable, dead weight made worse by injury, and Cole felt something tear in his shoulder as he hauled hand over hand. "Use your legs," he shouted down the shaft. "Push when you can." Wade tried, his boots scrabbling against stone, but he was fading fast. Cole could hear it in his breathing, see it in the way his head lolled, when Cole finally dragged him over the lip of the shaft and laid him on solid ground. "Stay with me," Cole said, checking Wade's injuries. The Marshal's shirt was soaked with blood from a wound Cole hadn't even noticed before. A bullet had creased his side, deep enough to be serious. "Did we get the gold?" Wade asked, his voice dreamy with shock. "Some of it." "Mission accomplished then." Wade smiled weakly. "You can collect your pardon. Let's worry about keeping you alive first." Cole tore strips from his shirt and bound Wade's side as best he could. The Marshal needed a doctor, needed proper medical care, needed things Cole couldn't provide in the middle of nowhere with a mountain collapsing behind them. The creek bed, Cole remembered. Elena said there's a creek bed. He lifted Wade in a fireman's carry, the Marshal's weight settling across his shoulders like judgment and redemption mixed together. Then he started walking, following the slope downward toward where moonlight glinted off water. He found Elena exactly where she'd promised, sitting on a rock beside a thin stream with the canvas sack at her feet and a look in her eyes that said she'd been about to give up and leave. When she saw him carrying Wade, something softened in her expression. "Told you he'd come back,"
she said to no one in particular. Stubborn as always. Together they got Wade settled on a flat piece of ground near the water. Elena had field medical training from somewhere. She didn't say where, and Cole didn't ask. And she worked on Wade's injuries with competent hands while Cole kept watch. "Is he going to make it?" Cole asked. "If we can get him to a doctor in the next 12 hours, maybe. Longer than that." She didn't finish the sentence. Cole looked back at the mining camp. The fires had spread, consuming what the collapse hadn't destroyed. Somewhere in that inferno were millions in gold. Silas's body, Serrano's crew, and the wreckage of a plan that had killed too many men and solved nothing. "There's a settlement about 20 miles north," Elena said, washing blood from her hands in the stream. "San Rafael. They have a doctor, or they did 8 years ago. You've been planning this for a while." "Since the day I realized Silas wasn't invincible. Since the day I understood that waiting for rescue was the same as giving up." She looked at him in the moonlight. "I stopped waiting for you to save me, Cole. I learned to save myself." There was both accusation and pride in her voice, and Cole understood that the woman he'd married, the gentle, trusting girl from Santa Fe, had died in that cabin in the mountains. The woman who'd emerged was harder, sharper, someone who'd learned to survive by any means necessary. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it, for not finding you, for not being strong enough to stand up to Silas earlier, for—" "Don't!" Elena's voice was sharp. "Don't apologize for things that weren't your fault. Silas was a monster. He chose to be a monster. That's on him, not you." Wade stirred, consciousness flickering. "Where are we?" "Safe," Cole said. "For now." "The gold?" Elena held up the canvas sack. "About 30 pounds of it, maybe $40,000 worth. The rest is buried under half a mountain." Wade actually laughed, then winced as the motion pulled at his injuries. Federal government's gonna love that report. Mission accomplished, gold permanently lost. Vance earned his pardon by saving my life instead of recovering the stolen property. "You'll still give me the pardon?" Cole asked. Wade met his eyes. "You came back for me when you could have run. You pulled me out of that mountain when leaving me would have been easier. Far as I'm concerned, you earned it twice over." Elena looked between them, something like understanding dawning in her expression. "You two actually trust each other." "Don't sound so surprised," Wade said. "Your husband's a better man than his reputation suggests." "I'm starting to remember that." They rested for an hour while the moon climbed higher and the fires in the mining camp gradually burned themselves out. Cole kept watch, his pistol across his knees, listening for sounds of pursuit that never came. Everyone who might have chased them was dead or trapped or too smart to follow. When Wade could sit up without passing out, they started the long journey north toward San Rafael. Cole and Elena took turns supporting the Marshal, moving slowly through terrain that wanted to kill them with every step. As dawn painted the eastern sky pink and gold, Wade spoke from his position between them. "What will you do?" he asked. "After this. After the pardon." Cole looked at Elena, and she looked back, and in that moment they both understood that the answer wasn't simple. They'd been apart for 8 years, had become different people shaped by different kinds of survival. The love that had married them in Santa Fe was still there, but it was buried under layers of pain and betrayal and hard-won independence. "I don't know," Cole said honestly. "First time in my life I've had the freedom to choose." "Choose carefully," Wade said. "Second chances don't come around often." They walked on as the sun rose. 3 survivors of a war fought over gold and pride and old wounds that might never fully heal. Behind them, the mountain held its secrets, buried treasure and buried men, all of it slowly being reclaimed by stone and time. San Rafael appeared on the horizon around noon, a small settlement that looked like salvation to people who'd been through hell. They staggered into town drawing stares and whispers, this strange procession of 2 outlaws and a federal marshal barely clinging to life. The doctor was an older woman named Morrison, who took one look at Wade and immediately went to work, shooing Cole and Elena out of her clinic with orders not to return for at least 4 hours. They found themselves standing in the dusty street, suddenly alone together for the first time since that impossible reunion in the collapsing mine. "I have money now," Elena said, indicating the canvas sack. "Enough to go anywhere, be anyone. I was thinking California. Somewhere with ocean and no memories.
Sounds nice. You could come with me? We could try to find what we lost, or build something new. Cole thought about it, really thought about it. The woman standing next to him was a stranger wearing his wife's face, and he was a different man than the one who'd married her. But maybe that didn't matter. Maybe what mattered was that they'd both survived, both learned to be strong, both earned the right to choose their own futures. I'd like that, he said. But first I need to see Wade through this. Make sure he gets back to Salvation, files his report, gets me that pardon officially recorded. And then? Then I come find you, wherever you are. Elena smiled, and for a moment he saw the girl from Santa Fe in her eyes. You promise? I promise. No more lies, no more betrayals. Just honest intention and whatever happens next. She kissed him then, properly this time, in the middle of San Rafael's main street with townspeople watching and the morning sun warm on their faces. When they broke apart, Cole saw tears on her cheeks. Don't make me wait 8 years this time, she said. Wouldn't dream of it. They spent the next 3 days in San Rafael while Wade healed enough to travel. The doctor was skeptical about his chances, but Wade had survived worse and was too stubborn to die in a comfortable bed. On the 4th day, a contingent of federal soldiers arrived, drawn by reports of explosions and fires at the old mining camp. Their lieutenant was a young man named Garrett, who listened to Wade's report with increasing disbelief. So the gold is buried, Wade said. Completely unrecoverable without excavation equipment we don't have and time we can't spare. Silas Crow is dead. Mateo Serrano is dead. Most of their crews are dead. The territory is secure. Garrett looked at Cole. And this is the outlaw you pulled from the gallows? This is Cole Vance, who assisted in the investigation and saved my life multiple times. I'm recommending a full federal pardon. The judge is going to have questions. The judge can ask them. My report will be thorough. Wade's voice carried the weight of 14 years of federal authority. Cole Vance is a free man, Lieutenant. See that the paperwork reflects that. Garrett opened his mouth to argue, saw something in Wade's expression, and wisely chose silence instead. That night, Cole and Elena sat on the porch of the boarding house where they'd been staying, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. I leave tomorrow, Elena said. The stage runs to El Paso, then I can catch the railroad west. I know. Will you really come find me? Cole took her hand. I will. Soon as Wade's back in Salvation and that pardon's official, I'm on the first stage west. You have my word. Your word used to mean something, she said softly. Before Silas. Before everything went wrong. I'd like to believe it still does. It does. I'll prove it to you. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd loved and lost and somehow found each other again in the ruins of everything they'd been. It wasn't a perfect ending, wasn't even a guaranteed happy one, but it was honest and real and more than either of them had dared hope for. In the morning, Elena boarded the stage with her canvas sack and a small bag of belongings. She looked back once as the horses pulled away, and Cole raised his hand in farewell. You love her, Wade said from behind him. Always have. Question is whether we can build something new from the pieces of what we were. Only one way to find out. Cole turned to face the Marshal. Wade was still pale, still moving carefully, but there was steel in his eyes and strength in his voice. Let's get you home, Marshal. You've got a report to file, and I've got a pardon to collect. After that, I've got a promise to keep and a life to start living. They rode out of San Rafael at noon, heading north toward Salvation under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Behind them lay death and gold, and the ghost of a man who'd chosen darkness over light. Ahead lay possibility and redemption, and the chance to be something better than the sum of past mistakes. Cole Vance had walked into that mine as a condemned outlaw with nothing to lose. He was riding out as a free man with everything to gain, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, the future looked like something worth fighting for. The ride back to Salvation took 5 days that felt like crossing between two different worlds. Wade's injuries slowed them considerably, forcing frequent stops where the Marshal could rest and let his body knit itself back together through sheer stubborn will. Cole used the time to think about Elena heading west, about the promise he'd made, about what kind of man he wanted to be when this was finally over. On the 3rd day, as they watered their horses at a creek crossing, Wade broke the comfortable silence they'd settled into. You're quieter than usual, the Marshal said.
Worried she won't wait?
Worried I don't deserve her waiting. Cole watched the water flow over smooth stones, carrying everything downstream toward destinations unknown. 8 years she was Silas's prisoner. 8 years I thought she was dead and moved on with my life. What right do I have to ask her to build a future with me? Wade considered this while cleaning his peacemaker with the methodical care of a man who'd learned to trust his life to well-maintained tools. You didn't know she was alive. Can't fault yourself for grieving someone you thought was lost. Can't I? Silas knew exactly what he was doing when he told me she was dead. He knew it would destroy something in me, make me reckless, easier to control or eliminate. Cole's hands clenched. I should have looked harder, should have questioned the story, should have what? Torn apart every town in the territory looking for a woman buried under a false name? Silas was smart and cruel, and he played a long game. Wade holstered his pistol. You want to honor what Elena survived? Then be the man she remembers, not the one Silas tried to make you. They mounted up and continued north, the landscape gradually shifting from badlands to something resembling civilization. They passed farms and ranches, saw children playing in yards and women hanging laundry, and Cole felt the strange disconnection of someone returning from war to find the world had continued without him. On the 4th day, they encountered the first real complication. The checkpoint appeared without warning, a makeshift barrier across the road manned by 4 soldiers in federal uniforms. Their lieutenant was a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who studied Wade's credentials with professional skepticism. Marshal Mercer, she said, we've been watching for you. There are some questions about your mission parameters and the disposition of federal property. Wade's expression went carefully neutral. What kind of questions, Lieutenant? Reyes. Lieutenant Maria Reyes. She gestured to a tent set up beside the road. If you'll come with me, sir, this won't take long. Cole started to follow, but Reyes held up a hand. The civilian waits here. The civilian is under my protective custody, Wade said. He goes where I go. Reyes studied Cole with the kind of assessment that missed nothing. This is Cole Vance, the condemned outlaw. This is Cole Vance, federal contractor and material witness. He's also the reason I'm alive to file my report. Wade's tone allowed no argument. He stays with me. Inside the tent, a major sat behind a folding table covered in maps and documents. He was older, gray-haired, with the worn face of someone who'd spent too many years managing other people's disasters. Marshal Mercer, the major said without preamble. I'm Major Crawford. I've been tasked with recovering the stolen military payroll. Your preliminary report suggests that's not going to happen. That's correct, sir. The gold is buried under approximately 3,000 tons of collapsed mine shaft. Excavation would require equipment, manpower, and time we don't have. Crawford's jaw tightened. That gold represents critical infrastructure funding. Without it, we have garrisons that can't operate, contractors who won't be paid, and a territorial economy that could collapse. I understand the stakes, Major, but the alternative would have been letting Silas Crow and Mateo Serrano escape with it across the border, where we'd never see a single ingot again. So instead, it's lost entirely. Wade pulled a leather pouch from his coat and set it on the table. Inside were 4 gold ingots, each one stamped with military markings. This is what we were able to recover before the collapse. Approximately $10,000 worth. It's not the full amount, but it proves the gold exists and provides a starting point for future recovery operations. Crawford picked up one of the ingots, weighing it in his hand. His expression suggested he was calculating costs and benefits, political fallout, and practical realities. Where did you get these? He asked. Mr. Vance recovered them during the engagement. Without his assistance, I wouldn't have survived to bring back even this much. Crawford's eyes shifted to Cole. That's generous testimony for an outlaw who was supposed to hang. Cole Vance saved my life 3 times, Major. He tracked the criminals through country that would have killed a lesser man, provided tactical intelligence that proved accurate, and extracted me from a collapsing mine at considerable personal risk. Wade's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I've recommended a full federal pardon, and I stand by that recommendation. The tent was silent except for the canvas flapping in the wind. Crawford studied them both, clearly running calculations that had nothing to do with gold and everything to do with politics and perception. The territorial judge won't like this, Crawford said finally. He'll want someone to hang for those 17 deaths. Then he can hang Silas Crow's corpse, Wade said, which is currently buried under that mine along with Mateo Serrano and approximately 20 other criminals who won't be troubling the territory anymore. And the rest of Crow's gang? Scattered or dead? The organization is broken. The threat is neutralized. Crawford was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll need your full written report within 48 hours. Include everything: the tracking, the engagement, the recovery operations, and your assessment of ongoing threats. You'll have it, sir. As for your recommendation regarding Mr. Vance, Crawford looked directly at Cole. I'll forward it to the judge with my endorsement. But understand, this is politically complicated. The governor's nephew died in that robbery. There will be pressure to hold someone accountable. The men accountable are dead, Wade said. Cole Vance is a material witness and federal contractor who fulfilled his obligations with honor. That's what my report will state. Crawford nodded, dismissed them, and they walked back into afternoon sunlight that felt cleaner than the air inside that tent. That could have gone worse, Cole said. It's not over yet. The judge is the real obstacle. Wade mounted his roan with visible effort, his ribs still aching. Judge Blackwell is a hard man who believes in hard justice. He won't be easy to convince. They reached Salvation the next afternoon, riding in under a sky-threatening rain. The town looked exactly as Cole remembered from the morning Wade had pulled him from his cell. Dusty streets, weathered buildings, and the gallows still standing in the yard where they'd meant to hang him. People stopped to stare as they rode past. Cole saw recognition in their faces, saw the whispers spreading like ripples in water. The outlaw who'd escaped the rope, riding back into town beside the marshal who'd arrested half the criminals in the territory. Wade took them directly to the federal courthouse, a brick building that looked more like a fortress than a temple of justice. Inside, they found Judge Blackwell in his chambers, reviewing documents by lamplight, even though it was barely past noon. The judge was exactly as Wade had described, hard and angular as carved granite, with eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for sentences that made strong men weep. He looked up as they entered, and his expression suggested he'd been expecting them. Marshal Mercer, he said, I've received preliminary reports about your mission. Sit. They sat. Cole felt like he was back in that condemned cell, waiting for another judge to pronounce another sentence. Blackwell read through Wade's written report in silence, his face giving nothing away. When he finished, he set the papers aside and steepled his fingers. 17 civilians dead, including the governor's nephew, 200,000 in federal gold lost, a mining complex destroyed. Multiple fatalities among known criminals. He looked at Cole. And you want me to pardon the man who rode with the gang leader? I want you to pardon the man who helped bring that gang leader to justice, Wade said. Cole Vance had no involvement in the robbery. He was in your jail when it happened, scheduled to hang for previous crimes that had nothing to do with this case. Yet, his brother planned and executed the robbery. A brother who kept Cole's wife prisoner for 8 years. A brother who shot Cole in the back and left him for dead. A brother who Cole helped me track across 200 miles of hostile territory. Wade leaned forward. Judge, I've been marshalling for 14 years. I know the difference between a career criminal and a man trying to change. Cole Vance is the latter. Blackwell's eyes shifted to Cole. What do you have to say for yourself? Cole met his gaze without flinching. I've done things I'm not proud of, Your Honor. Rode with outlaws, stole money, hurt people who didn't deserve it. But I never killed anyone who wasn't trying to kill me first, and I never touched the innocent. He paused. Marshal Mercer gave me a chance to be something better than what I was. I took that chance. I fulfilled my end of the bargain. Now I'm asking you to honor yours. The bargain was to recover the gold. The bargain was to try, Wade interjected, which Cole did at considerable personal risk. The fact that Silas Crow chose to destroy everything rather than be captured isn't Cole's fault. Blackwell was quiet, studying them both with an expression that gave nothing away. Outside, the rain finally started, drumming on the roof like distant gunfire. There's political pressure to make an example, the judge said finally. The governor wants blood for his nephew. The army wants accountability for the lost payroll. The territory wants to feel safe again. Then give them what they want, Cole said. Put out word that Silas Crow is dead, Mateo Serrano is dead, and the criminal enterprises they represented are finished. That's accountability. That's justice.
And you? I disappear. Change my name, start over somewhere else. The territory gets its safety, you get your justice, and I get a chance to live a life that doesn't end on your gallows. Wade started to object, but Cole silenced him with a look. This was the play, the only one that made sense. A dead outlaw was better for everyone than a pardoned one. Blackwell considered this, his fingers drumming on the desk. If I were to agree to this arrangement, and I'm not saying I am, where would you go? California. Far from here, far from the frontier, far from anyone who remembers Cole Vance. And if you're recognized, if someone comes looking, then I deal with it. But I won't come back here, won't cause trouble in this territory, won't give anyone reason to regret showing mercy. The judge looked at Wade. Your opinion, Marshal? I think Cole Vance has earned his freedom. I also think officially pardoning him creates complications we don't need. Wade's voice was careful, measured. If the records show Cole Vance died during the engagement, caught in the mine collapse, say, then everyone gets what they want. The territory gets closure, Cole gets his life, and justice is served. Blackwell pulled out a ledger and opened it to a page marked with Cole's name and crimes. He studied it for a long moment, then picked up his pen. Cole Vance, he said formally, died on the 17th of this month during the engagement at the abandoned mining complex. His body was lost in the collapse and is presumed unrecoverable. The case is hereby closed. He made a notation in the ledger, signed it, and looked up. That man no longer exists in the eyes of the law. What happens to whoever walks out of this office is no longer my concern. Cole felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Thank Marshal Mercer, who vouched for you when no one else would. And don't make me regret this decision by showing up in my territory again. You won't see me, sir. You have my word. They left the courthouse as the rain intensified, turning the streets to mud and the sky to gray. Wade walked with Cole to the livery stable where his gray mare was being housed, neither man speaking until they stood in front of the stall. So this is it, Wade said. End of the partnership. Looks like. Cole extended his hand. Thank you, Marshal, for everything. Wade shook his hand firmly. You earned it, Vance, or whatever you're calling yourself now. Haven't decided yet. Maybe something simple. John Smith, Bill Jones. Whatever name you choose, wear it better than the last one. Wade pulled an envelope from his coat. Your share of the recovered gold. Major Crawford authorized payment for contractors. It's not a fortune, but it'll get you to California and then some. Cole took the envelope, feeling the weight of bills inside. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You saved my life. That's worth more than gold. Wade's expression softened slightly. Find your wife, Vance. Build that life you talked about. Be the man she remembers, not the one Silas tried to make you. I intend to. Cole paused. What about you? What's next for the famous Marshal Mercer? Same thing as always. Track criminals, bring them to justice, try not to get shot in the process. Wade smiled slightly. Though I admit, I'll miss having a partner who understands how outlaws think. You ever need help again? Send word to San Francisco, general delivery. Ask for... Cole thought for a moment. Ask for William Cole. William Cole, got it. Wade offered his hand again and they shook one more time. Good luck, William. I hope California treats you well. Same to you, Marshal. Try not to get yourself killed chasing the next desperate outlaw. Wade laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing ribs. No promises. Cole saddled his mare and packed the few belongings he'd accumulated. A bedroll, some provisions, the envelope of money, and the weight of a future he'd earned through blood and hard choices. As he led the horse out of the stable, Wade was already walking back toward the courthouse, his silhouette straight and strong despite his injuries. The stage to El Paso left at dawn the next morning. Cole spent the night in a boarding house under his new name, barely sleeping, thinking about Elena somewhere ahead of him on the same route west, about the woman she'd become in captivity, about the man he'd been forced to become in survival, about whether two people who'd been broken by the same evil could heal each other or just share matching scars. Rain continued through the night, washing the streets clean, and by morning the world smelled fresh and new. Cole boarded the stage as William Cole,
paying with cash and keeping his hat low. The other passengers, a merchant, a young couple heading to California to start a farm, and an older woman visiting her daughter, paid him no particular attention. To them, he was just another drifter heading west, one face among thousands seeking fortune or escape or redemption in the vast possibility of California. The stage rolled out of Salvation under clearing skies. Cole watched through the window as the town disappeared behind them, taking with it the gallows and the condemned cell and the ghost of Cole Vance, who died in a mine collapse alongside his brother, and the gold they'd both killed for. The journey west took 3 weeks, stage to El Paso, train to Los Angeles, then up the coast to San Francisco. Cole used the time to practice being William Cole, to learn how to answer to a new name, to shed the outlaw's wariness and try on the disguise of an ordinary man with ordinary dreams. San Francisco hit him like a wave, noise and people and buildings stacked on hills that seemed to defy gravity. After the vast emptiness of the frontier, the city felt like being pressed into a crowd of strangers, all wanting something he couldn't provide. He found a cheap hotel near the waterfront and spent 2 days searching. The city had dozens of boarding houses, hundreds of places someone could disappear if they wanted to. He asked careful questions, showed no desperation, and tried not to think about the possibility that Elena had changed her mind and kept going north to Oregon or Washington, or disappeared into some small town where she could be anyone. On the 3rd day, he found her. She was working in a bakery on the edge of Chinatown, helping an older Chinese woman run the counter while fresh bread cooled on racks behind them. She wore a simple dress and an apron dusted with flour, and her hair was pulled back in a practical bun that made her look younger than Cole remembered. When she saw him through the window, she froze. Their eyes met, and Cole saw the same question in her expression that he felt in his chest. Was this real? Could this work? Were they brave enough to try? He walked into the bakery. The bell above the door chimed, and Elena excused herself to the older woman in halting Cantonese before coming around the counter. They stood there, 2 feet apart, strangers who'd once been married and might be again if they could figure out how to bridge the years between. "You came," Elena said. "Told you I would. A lot of men make promises." "I'm not a lot of men." Cole pulled off his hat, holding it awkwardly. "I'm William Cole now." Cole Vance died in a mine collapse in the official records. "William Cole," she tested the name. "I'm Elena Morrison, distant cousin to the doctor in San Rafael, or at least that's what my papers say." "Fresh starts for both of us, then." Elena studied his face like she was reading a map to somewhere she'd once known. "I'm not the girl you married, William. That girl died in a cabin in the mountains. The woman I am now, she's harder, less trusting, more likely to run than stay and fight. I'm not the man you married either. He died about 3 different times between the gallows and here. What's left is someone trying to figure out how to be decent when decent was never the easy choice. So what do we do?" Cole thought about Wade's words, about being the man Elena remembered instead of the one Silas tried to create. About redemption earned through action instead of granted through words. "We try," he said. "No promises beyond today, no expectations beyond honesty. We try, and if it works, we keep trying. And if it doesn't," he let the sentence trail off. "If it doesn't, we walk away as friends who survived the same nightmare and live to tell about it." Elena's eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. "I can accept those terms. So can I." She stepped forward then, closing the distance between them, and Cole wrapped his arms around her carefully, like she was something precious and breakable. She fit against him the way she always had, and for a moment they were just 2 people holding on to each other while the world spun past. "I have a room above the bakery," Elena said against his chest. "It's small, but it's clean and safe and mine. There's probably space for 2 if we don't mind being close." "I don't mind at all." She pulled back enough to look at him. "I work dawn to dusk 6 days a week. Mrs. Chen pays fair and she doesn't ask questions about my past. It's honest work, William. The first honest work I've done in 8 years." "Sounds perfect." "What about you? What will you do?" Cole thought about that. The money from Wade would last a few months if they were careful, but he'd need work eventually. Something legitimate, something that didn't involve guns or running or looking over his shoulder for the law. "I'm good with horses," he said, "and I can do carpentry, construction work, anything that needs a strong back and steady hands. San Francisco's growing, Should be work somewhere. Then we'll make it work. Elena smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Together, one day at a time. They walked upstairs to her small room overlooking the bakery. It smelled like fresh bread and possibility, and when Cole set his bag down in the corner, it felt like the first real home he'd had since Santa Fe. That night, they sat by the window and watched the city lights come on across the hills. Elena told him about the 8 years in captivity. Not all of it, just enough that Cole understood the depths she'd survived. And Cole told her about the years between, about the crimes and the running and the cell, and Wade Mercer pulling him from the gallows for one last gamble that had somehow paid off. "Do you think about him?" Elena asked. "Silas?" "Every day. Probably will for the rest of my life." Cole was quiet for a moment. "He was my brother. Part of me still loves who he was before the darkness took him. But I'm glad he's dead. Glad that chapter is closed." "Me too." Elena leaned against his shoulder. "I used to dream about killing him. Spent years planning how I'd do it, what I'd say, how it would feel. Then when the moment came, it was just necessary. Like putting down a rabid dog. No triumph, no revenge, just survival. You saved my life when you killed him. Probably saved Wade's, too. Then maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how we move forward, knowing we survived when we could have been destroyed." The weeks became months, and the months became a year. William Cole found work at a shipyard, building vessels that would carry people to places he'd never see. Elena continued at the bakery, learning Cantonese and building friendships with neighbors who didn't care about her past. They married again in a simple ceremony at City Hall, this time as William and Elena Cole, two people choosing each other with eyes wide open to who they really were. No illusions, no fantasies, just the honest commitment to keep trying. Wade Mercer sent one letter delivered to General Delivery in San Francisco 6 months after Cole arrived. It was brief and to the point. The territory was stable, the recovered gold had helped, and Judge Blackwell sent his regards to whatever man had the good sense to die and stay dead. Cole burned the letter after reading it, watched the paper turn to ash, and felt the last connection to his old life dissolve into smoke. 2 years after arriving in San Francisco, Elena found out she was pregnant. The news terrified them both. Neither was sure they knew how to be parents after everything they'd survived. But when their daughter was born on a rainy March morning, she was perfect and whole and represented a future neither of them had dared hope for. They named her Sarah, after Wade's lost daughter, though they never told anyone the significance. 5 years passed, then 10. The frontier faded into memory and myth, replaced by the daily reality of work and family and the small battles of ordinary life. Cole's hair started showing gray, and Elena's hands grew rough from baker's work, and they grew into the life they'd built the way plants grow toward sunlight. Sometimes Cole would stand at the window of their small house overlooking the bay and think about the man he'd been, the outlaw, the condemned, the brother of a monster. That man felt like a stranger now, someone from a story he'd heard but never lived. Sarah grew into a bright, curious child who loved stories about the frontier, but had no idea her father had lived the kind of tales he told her at bedtime. To her, William Cole was just Papa, the man who built things with his hands, who smelled like sawdust and ocean air, who told her every night that she could be anything she wanted because she was braver than she knew. On the 10th anniversary of that dawn stage ride out of Salvation, Cole and Elena took Sarah to the beach. They watched her run along the sand, chasing waves and seagulls, laughing with the pure joy of a child who'd never known terror or betrayal or the weight of survival. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked. "Giving up the frontier, the freedom of open country, all of that?" Cole thought about the question seriously before answering. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity. Out there, you knew who your enemies were and what they wanted. Here, it's more complicated." He watched Sarah find a shell and run back to show them her treasure. "But this is better than anything I had before. This is worth every mile, every scar, every choice that led here. Even Silas? Even Silas. Without him, without all of it, I wouldn't have learned what I'm capable of when everything's at stake. Wouldn't have found my way back to you. Wouldn't have this." But he gestured to Sarah, to the ocean, to the life they'd built from ruins. Elena took his hand. "Sometimes I think about the girl I was in Santa Fe, how naive she was, How trusting. I used to mourn her. And now? Now I understand she had to die so I could become strong enough to survive, strong enough to fight, strong enough to build this. She squeezed his hand. We're not the people we were, William. We're better. Harder won, but better. Sarah ran back with her shell, demanding her father examine it properly and proclaim it the finest shell ever found on any beach anywhere. Cole obliged with the seriousness the moment deserved, and they walked back toward the city as the sun set over the Pacific. That night, after Sarah was asleep and the house was quiet, Cole sat at the small desk where he kept his private papers. Buried beneath ordinary documents was the only thing he'd kept from his old life. The federal writ that had pulled him from the condemned cell, signed by Wade Mercer and Judge Blackwell. He read it one last time, remembering the man who'd gambled everything on one desperate tracking job through country that wanted to kill him. Remembered the Marshal who'd trusted him, when trust should have been impossible. Remembered the moment he'd chosen to go back for Wade instead of running, and how that choice had changed everything that followed. Then he burned the writ, watching it curl and blacken in the flame of a single candle. When it was ash, he scattered it from the window and watched it disappear into the San Francisco night. Cole Vance was dead, buried under a mountain in the Badlands along with his brother and enough stolen gold to tempt saints into sin. What remained was William Cole, husband, father, carpenter, citizen. A man who'd earned his redemption one hard choice at a time and learned to live with both his scars and his second chances. The frontier was changing, taming itself or being tamed, depending on who told the story. The wild places were shrinking, and men like Silas and Serrano were becoming legends more than threats. The age of outlaws and marshals and desperate gambits was fading into history, replaced by something more civilized and infinitely more complicated. But on quiet nights when the fog rolled in from the ocean and the city's sounds faded to whispers, Cole sometimes thought about Wade Mercer still out there somewhere, still hunting, still bringing order to chaos through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Wondered if the Marshal ever thought about the outlaw he'd saved, whether he considered it his finest moment or his biggest gamble. And he hoped, though he'd never know for certain, that Wade had found his own measure of peace, that somewhere in the endless pursuit of justice, the Marshal had discovered that some debts were paid, some risks worth taking, some outlaws worth saving. The story that had started with 17 bodies and a desperate gamble had ended with a family on a beach, watching sunset paint the Pacific gold. Not a perfect ending, not even a simple one, but an honest one, earned through blood and hard choices, and the willingness to become someone better than circumstance had tried to make them. In the official records, Cole Vance remained dead, buried with the gold and the ghosts of men who'd chosen darkness over light. But in a small house overlooking San Francisco Bay, William Cole lived, flawed and scarred, and grateful for every ordinary day of the extraordinary life he'd been given the chance to build. And that, he thought as he closed the window against the night chill, was justice of the truest kind.